You're listening to the Cynic Radio Podcast. Now, your hosts, Igri and Cynic.
And welcome to episode 9 of the Cynic Radio Podcast. I'm Igri, here with my best bud in the whole wide world, the man who knows it all when it comes to The Walking Dead, Cynic. We're going to have a good time this week. We're going to be looking at The Walking Dead Episode 7, Sing Me a Song, the return of Negan. We're going to be talking about some reader mail. We're going to do What's Up. We're going to do it all in the next hour and change. So settle in, buckle up, and let's get going. So we've been getting a lot of feedback here at the Cynic Radio Podcast from all of our loyal fans and listeners. Again, you can reach us at cynicradio.com, cynicradio@gmail.com, at Cynic Radio on Twitter, and facebook.com/cynicradio. We really love hearing from you. We're going to answer a couple of questions right now from some of our more loyal listeners. Our first question comes from Barry from Wales. It says, "Hey, I really enjoyed your Thanksgiving and Holiday Inn awkward stories. Are there going to be any more awkward stories like that in the future? They seem like a lot of fun."
Well, that's a good question, Barry. We actually didn't get any in this week, but we're going to encourage people to send them to us. Yeah, we're at cynicradio@gmail.com. What we're going to do over the next couple weeks is we're going to run a contest, and the person that sends us the most awkward story with proof of subscription to the show, we're going to send them out a special Walking Dead gift. Also, I'd just like to let everybody know, every week it feels like we're building a new audience. And if you like what you hear, even if you tolerate what you hear, find the subscribe button and we'll come right to your phone every week. We don't need to find you. You don't need to find us. We'll just be there waiting for you.
Like any good friendship.
All right, we got another one. Dear Cynic Radio Podcast, I follow you guys on Twitter. I noticed this past week you were live tweeting The Walking Dead. Is that something new or was that a one-time thing? Thanks, Kevin from Chicago.
Well, Kevin, that's going to be something new. We're going to keep doing that. We might do it to some other things later, but for right now, that's just going to be Walking Dead. We're going to be doing the mid-season finale. We're going to live tweet all the way through that. We're going to have some fun. We're going to put up some polls. Follow us, retweet us, share it with your friends. We'd love to see your comments, questions, anything there. If we see it pop up during the live feed, we might even answer you. We look forward to seeing it. We're on Twitter at Cynic Radio, CINIK Radio.
And thanks for the follow on Twitter, Kevin. We'll answer more questions next week as they come in. Send those awkward stories. It very well may pay off for you. Miss out on that latest viral video? Didn't see the most recent trailer for the next movie coming out? In the dark about what the biggest song in America is? We've got you covered. Every week we scour the internet and look for the latest and greatest. This is What's Up.
What's up for me this week is the new trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Coming out in May of 2017, this movie looks amazing, just like the first one. I had a great time watching it. Baby Groot is absolutely hilarious, and the action is unstoppable. It's a lot of fun. Check it out on YouTube or on imdb.com. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. The trailer is available now. That's What's Up.
Well, what's up for me this week is Kia and Melissa from the Two Dead Chicks podcast. Without a doubt, the most informative and in-depth Walking Dead podcast in a vast landscape of them. Their love for the show is infectious, and you'll find yourself laughing along with them. They also do these impressions, and they sound like the real people. They are my go-to Walking Dead podcasts. The Two Dead Chicks. Check them out on iTunes or wherever podcasts are found. That's What's Up. Well, we open episode 7 with Michonne stalking up and down the road, and she seems to be whistling. The song she's whistling is The Farmer in the Dell, which very well might be a call out to Omar from The Wire. The Wire is about the drug epidemic in Baltimore, Maryland, and what the police have to do to combat against it. It's also one of mine and Robert Kirkman's favorite shows, hence the numerous Wire alum on The Walking Dead. Father Gabriel, Bob, Therese, and I'm sure we'll see more in the future. Two walkers emerge from the woods and she makes quick work of them. I think there's definitely a parallel between Omar and Michonne, because they're absolutely the two baddest people written for TV. She takes care of the bodies, and then she drags them off. They focus a walkie-talkie on the ground. It's making no noise. It's in her bag. We cut to Rick, and he's in the back of a box truck with Aaron. Rick checks the walkie. Michonne's obviously not on the other end. And then we shoot to a few saviors sitting on the back of a truck, waiting for some walkers to be redirected in the distance. Fat Joey is apparently good at something besides eating cake. They start talking about the explosives. They bring up the RPGs they took from Rick's group. Carl and Jesus pop out of their hiding spot.
Carl and Jesus, Carl is going to win the hide-and-seek championship here, I think. He's doing pretty well. But Jesus is no slouch either.
Yeah, Jesus is definitely... he's a force to be reckoned with. Climbing up, jumping off things.
Parkour!
So parkour. The worst possible thing happens in the episode. Jesus begins to open up and dump out perfectly good maple syrup on the ground, which offends me as a syrup connoisseur.
That is not what syrup is supposed to be used for.
Absolutely not.
Even just drinking it is okay. But pouring it on the ground, man, that's just wasteful. I mean, I don't know if they're not obviously in the Great White North where they can just tap the nearest maple tree and get their own syrup. They're down south. Come on, man. Where are you going to get more?
So Carl tricks Jesus into jumping out of the box truck by telling him, go ahead, you do it first, show me how it's done. I think I would probably do that to you as well. I would just give you a shove and be like, all right, Dick, we'll see how this works out for you.
Hey, tuck and roll, man.
Carl grabs the coolest gun that they can find as they pull into the Savior's compound. He locks and loads. You can overhear Negan outside the truck. Henchman number 1 gets on the truck and promptly drops at least 10 years worth of syrup on the ground, and Carl, for that, gives him a lead sandwich, and I couldn't have applauded him more for that.
Hey, I think Carl's had enough of people wasting syrup. He watched Jesus do it, now this guy's just going to dump it all on the ground. Time to lay down, buddy.
That's right. Stay back. Drop your weapons. I only want Negan. He killed my friend. No one else needs to die. Well, you know that this situation isn't going to work out with anything else than other people needing to die.
And I'm honestly surprised that Carl didn't catch one in the head right at that moment.
In your opinion, though, Carl's most badass moment in the series so far?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, he had some great moments in some of the previous seasons. I mean, obviously, putting one in your mother is pretty tough, but standing there in front of all of those saviors, that was pretty rough.
The ominous Negan whistle begins. You're so adorable. Did you pick that gun because it looks cool? You totally did, right? Kid, I ain't gonna lie to you. You scared the shit out of me. Someone else gets shot, and Not Daryl tackles Carl to the ground, and Carl gives him a nice, crisp shot across the pancake face. Negan calls him off and extends his hand. Is that any way to treat our new guest? Carl, of course, being a Grimes, refuses his hand. You give me that same damn stink eye your father does. It's only half as impressive, because you're missing an eye.
That was a pretty good joke. One thing I'm going to say about this episode is I think Negan could go on a stand-up tour because he's got jokes.
He does, and he seems to have them for everybody. I think he practices that stuff in the mirror. So we get a nice overview of the Savior's compound and a really badass Walker fence. Twining Daryl a little bit, Carl gives Negan his hand. More blaming twining of Dwight. I'm simply not going to have time to screw any of my wives today. He looks Dwight directly in the eye and smiles. Well, maybe one.
And that's just, rubbing a little salt in the wound there at Dwight. It's pretty rough. I mean, he's a good soldier for Negan, but I think Negan is really testing the boundaries.
I would not trust Dwight as far as I could throw him at this point. And he just kind of keeps kicking him in the ribs about it. I don't know how this works out for anything less than betrayal on Dwight's part,
Exactly. I mean, he's really giving him a hard time and just trying to see how far he can push him. And you can only push a man so far. I think Dwight's near the end of his rope. Carl
meekly asks Negan, what are you going to do? And Negan says, kid, don't ruin your image to me. You're a total badass. Don't be scared of me. So they go inside, and for effect, Negan makes everybody kneel. He gives a speech. People get fresh veggies with no points needed. Did you see the look in Carl's eye after he gave the speech? Was that pity for the people on the ground, or disbelief, or do you think he was actually a little impressed with Negan's stroke?
I think it was pity. obviously. I think that, really you're bartering with people over livelihood. You're holding them hostage over vegetables. Nobody likes vegetables anyway. You're going to try and bribe me with broccoli? Come on, man.
I don't know. See, Carl, up until the point he shot him, Carl was, of course, younger, but I always saw him as Team Shane, and I think he kind of appreciated the way Shane did things over his dad sometimes. Rick could be a soft touch in certain situations if he felt things were right. I think he was impressed. I think he looked over the side and saw all those people on their knees. Of course, Negan played it up for effect, like showing off, like, this is what I can do. I think he was kind of impressed with the whole situation. So we cut over to Rosita and Eugene. They're heading out. She verbally kicks Spencer in the balls. On a side note, Rosita is the only cast member I've met to date that looks better on the show than she actually does in person. There's just something they do to fix her up for the show where she looks like the ultimate soldier.
She does look like she's definitely soldier material. She looks like she could really kick some ass. She looks like the zombie apocalypse is where she belongs.
We cut to Negan's harem, where all of his wives are sitting around, and to quote Negan, they all look like they do in the books of an auto shop, so he directs Carl's eyes on where he should look. Sherry and Negan have a chat about Mark and Amber. This can go nowhere good. You know that Mark is kind of in for it, because he was messing around with Amber, who's now one of Negan's wives. Negan knows the full story anyway. And he tells her, there's rules for a reason, and that's why you're here. Sherry cops to the fact that Mark and Amber screwed up, and she wants him to go easy on him. Indignantly, Negan looks at her and says, have I ever hit any of you? Negan warns Amber that she can never cheat on him, and if she doesn't want to be here, he could always send her back to Mark and his mom and reassign her to another job.
We all know what job that would be, too. It'd probably be working on the wall or doing something absolutely dangerous. So basically, it's a death sentence.
Yeah, there's got to be there's got to be a ton of terrible jobs that he can give out, because he just seems like a great time just handing them out to people. He goes back to Sherry after he's done dressing down Amber and telling her that she's going to be okay, and Amber wants to stay there, and she loves him. And she said, see, I wasn't hard on him at all, even though I'm generally hard. She calls him an a-hole. He tells her, the messed up thing about that is that you know this and you like me anyway. They kiss as the comedy team of Daryl and not Daryl, still in a Snuggie clad, show up with some grub. Negan enjoys the awkwardness as he throws out the finger to hold on for a second. Carl and Daryl finally see each other, and a stunned look on his face. Carl takes the food from Daryl, and finally Daryl decides to speak. What do you have him here for? Negan threatens to put out a toothpick into Carl's other eye. He tells Dwight to fire up the furnace. It's time for a little deja vu. Now, the internet's abuzz with this, IG. Did you notice that Carl and Daryl might have been whispering to each other?
I didn't, but, that would have been a perfect opportunity to do so, because Negan was obviously distracted, a little bit off to the side. Not Daryl could easily be in on just about anything that's going on now because he's so fed up with what's happening.
The theories are that Daryl told Carl to get out of there, and that Carl whispered to Daryl she's alive. So that could only mean that not Honey, not Marcia, not Deer, but Maggie Reed is still kicking. That kind of made me happy a little bit. I hope that is what transpired, so Daryl isn't walking around with that on his conscience. Being a law enforcement official and following the rules, Rick and Aaron climb over a fence that clearly states do not. Spencer and Gabriel in a car. Spencer's railing against Rick about how most of this is his fault and that they should have never attacked the compound. And he says, basically, the only solace I have now is if Rick doesn't come back alive. Or Father Gabriel speaks highly of Rick. He brings people together. He's not a perfect man, but he's a man who finds his way.
Yeah, well, and that's it. Father Gabriel standing up for Rick because Rick actually gave Father Gabriel a little bit of what's up and a little bit of here we go and a little bit of kick in the giddy up. So you got to respect him a little bit, and he may not always be right, but he's always got a direction. After
he said what he said, Father Gabriel gives him the best look, and probably his best moment of the series so far. He makes him stop the car. And he says, "What you're saying doesn't make you a sinner, but it does make you a tremendous shit. Just for now. It doesn't have to be terminal. He exits the car and starts walking back towards Alexandria.
It was great to hear a priest call you a shit. That's classic, and you know it's got to be true because he's a priest. He doesn't have any reason to lie to you. He don't care.
Well, and we have some internet buzz, too, about what's going on or what possibly could take a place with Spencer as far as the comic book lore goes. Do you think that was a little bit of foreshadowing to his possible fate?
I think it was. I agree with that, and the internet was typically right, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree there. We'll definitely see what happens. The previews for the next show, Negan's blood is all over. I've noticed two things. He's shaved looking like comic book Negan, and there's blood all over his face and jacket. So somebody's going to get it. Somebody in Alexandria is not going to get to see the season 7 part 2 or whatever. Also, I noticed in that scene that the Walking Dead has gone to electric cars. That was the first one I'd ever seen on the show, and it makes sense because at a certain point, gas is definitely going to become an issue.
Yeah, but unless they have running electricity and charging stations for those cars, that's going to become an issue too. But I think, some of it's just advertisement placement and stuff, and they get some money to keep the show at a high quality. It's just placement.
Yeah, they did that with, I think it was a Hyundai Sonata. Wasn't Shane driving a Sonata forever? I know it was a Hyundai of some sort.
I think it was a Tucson or a Santa Fe.
Oh, was it? Okay. So Spencer he hops out of the car in an odd character choice, decides to bolt into the woods. I thought maybe he was going off to have himself a little cry. I wasn't quite sure where he was headed, but it was kind of odd, like, oh, fine, you're going to get out of the car, I'm going to run off into the woods. He comes across a walker up in a tree, in a tree stand with a crossbow. Back to Negan and Carl. He sits Carl down, almost like a principal and student type scenario, and says he wants to talk about Carl's future and he wants to get to know him a little bit better. But first, before he does that, you're like talking to a birthday present. You're gonna have to take that crap off. I mean, I want to see what Grandma got me.
Oh, that was such a good line, and Carl was not happy.
Yeah, he absolutely wasn't. He wasn't having any of that. I doubt he probably takes that thing off to clean. And I was wondering, too, why they're still doing the bandage and they haven't gone to a patch. But if you look at the damage around that eye socket, that would have to be an awful big patch to cover that up. Greg Nicotero, who does most of the special effects, that's why Chandler Riggs has grown his hair so long, is simply because then it's less work doing them up every episode as far as makeup and effects.
Yeah, it works, and it's kind of a good look. I mean, it's not like you have eye patches everywhere. The Halloween stores aren't opening every year anymore, so you can go pick one up cheap.
They argue a little bit, and finally Carl relents after Negan threatens him. You killed 2 of my men. That can't go unpunished. Negan shows how disgusted he is by Carl, kind of giving him the eye, and then he tells him he looks gross, he looks disgusting. Carl begins to sob, and then, amazed, Negan kind of gets a smile on his face and said, "Oh, can I touch it? Let me touch it."
Is it all gross and slimy?
What a terrible thing to do to somebody. I'm usually right with Negan, but come on, dude. You want to touch his eye socket? The crying seems to set Negan back a little bit, and he apologizes to Carl, and he says, "Listen, kid, sometimes I forget that you're just a kid." Fat Joey, my new favorite savior since Little Timmy and the Dick Brigade are no longer with us, brings Lucille up to Negan. Negan begins busting his balls about touching her. Negan tells him to keep it uncovered. It may not be a hit with the ladies, but I guarantee you, kid, no one's gonna screw with you looking like that.
Yeah, well, that's automatic tough factor plus 50 if you've got a big gaping eye socket.
He doesn't quite understand why Carl is so offended by everything he says. He says, "Listen, we're messing around. We're busting balls. This is some of the things that your dad's supposed to be teaching you." And then we get to one of the more, outside of Carl shooting the gun and tearing up the place, we get to one of the more iconic comic book moments with Carl. Negan wants him to sing him a song. So Carl begins to sob through "You Are My Sunshine" as Negan swings the bat around, being very distracting. Negan, after he's done and Carl's crying, Negan asks, "Is that what your mom used to sing you?" He asks about Lori. He wants to know what happened to her. And Carl reveals, I shot her before she could. Damn, kid. No wonder you're a serial killer in the making. See, that would be an example of busting balls, by the way. And with that, the iron is ready.
The iron is ready. Now back to Carl here. I mean, I know that the internet went abuzz. I was watching Twitter at the time. Sing Carl Papa, sing Carl Papa. Thank God they didn't do Carl Papa.
Yeah, I was a little less impressed with that, and the fact that it has millions upon millions of views just annoys me to no end. Right now there's some artist slaving away some way where playing a guitar at a honky tonk, he can't get 10 people to watch him. Somebody does an auto-tuned, shoddy song with bad lip reading, and next thing you know, he probably made significant profit off of it. It offends me on every single level.
Down to my bones.
So we shoot back out to the main savior area. What do you think the sanctuary is? It looks like some sort of old factory of some sort, right?
Yeah, factory, warehouse, combination of the two. More of a windowless place that's good for holding a bunch of people. It's reminiscent of the prison, but not quite as confined as the prison.
Not as well protected either. I like the idea of the Walker fence. Very smart, as long as none of them get loose. Very smart, because that's going to protect you more against the living than it will the dead, and I think that's more of the Savior's worry. They're more of a hand-to-hand group, so they can handle the dead. It's the living they seem to have problems with. That's why Rick and his group has repeatedly slaughtered them every time they come up against them.
Yeah, well, but ammo is a finite quantity, and you're going to keep running up against the never-ending pile of saviors. That's going to be a problem.
Well, and the difference between the comic book and the show, the Saviors didn't even bother taking Rick's guns because they thought it was just asinine to use them anyway. All you're going to do is attract more dead. That's why the Saviors are mostly crowbars and axes and such. So we cut down to the main Savior area. Crying Mark must know what's in store for him. He hands Carl Lucille, and he throws up a parental discretion advisory. This will not be pretty to watch. One of the best Negan moments in the series so far, outside of course, his dramatic entrance into the series, he gives a great speech about who the Saviors are and that there's rules and there's always a cost. What did you think of that speech?
He has really got the speech down to a science. He could be right there with Pat Riley, Lambeau, and Vince Lombardi. He can give a speech and rally the troops.
And a genius shade of irony there. The person heating the iron was probably the last person to take the iron, so Mark gets to see firsthand what's about to happen to him as it gets heated up and handed to Negan. Did you think that they were gonna actually show that, or did you think it was a implied thing? Cut to commercial. All right, the guy's face is burned.
Oh, I totally thought they were gonna imply it, but man, what a scene! Oh, and what great special effects. Unless they really did it to that guy, I mean, that's really dedication. But I don't think that happened.
Mark gets the iron, he screams, he passes out, he wets himself, and our good friend Daryl gets to wipe it up. Dwight seems a little shook. Daryl and Carl both stare at each other in disbelief, and Dr. Carson comes in and does his thing. He turns to Carl and kind of looks at him and says, "That was some pretty crazy shit, huh? You probably think I'm a lunatic." He puts his arm around Carl. "Let's go see what we're going to do with you." We cut back to the woods, and Spencer is trying to get the walker out of the tree stand, and he resorts to the only, outside of whining, he resorts to the only tool that Spencer knows how. He uses the grappling hook to hook onto the walker and begin pulling onto the tree stand. The bow falls. He begins to, he walks over to try to grab the bow, and then he sees that the walker's broken loose. The walker loses both arms, falls out of the tree stand, and lands directly on the ground, spraying Spencer with blood. Unfortunately for me, this week we're going to have to give Spencer Walker Kill of the Week by that. What do you think?
Well, and it's accidental Walker Kill of the Week because he was just trying to get the bow. And, the armless walker is always a good thing, but it was a pretty cool kill that he didn't mean to do. Does Spencer think he's Batman walking around with a grappling hook or something, or Charlie Bronson?
Yeah, really, who does carry a grappling hook around with them these days? Other than Jay and Silent Bob, I guess. So we cut over to Rosita and Eugene. They're back where him and Abraham were not too long ago. She wants that bullet in the worst way, and she's going to browbeat him down to a small little nub until she gets it.
And she's going to get it one way or another. Eugene is not the guy that's going to stand up to you. He's not the guy that's going to say, no, because it's not morally right to give you a bullet. Our leader said this is what we're doing, so this is what we're doing. Nope, Eugene is easily crushed, and shown again here, crushed again, going to make the bullet.
Well, the whole basis of our argument is we owe it to Abraham, and they very well might, but I don't think this is a case of Eugene's cowardice. I think that everything this guy does is well calculated, and no good can happen from Rosita having a bullet, especially just one.
Yeah, one bullet. I mean, I guess, one bullet can make a difference, but it's got to be one really well-placed bullet, and I'm not sure there's anywhere to place one right now.
Yeah, probably not. It can only lead to more heartache and maybe somebody else beating the vampire bat. We cut back up to Negan's office. He's sitting with a pad writing something. I don't know what kind of planning or notes the Saviors need. It's almost like he's psychologically dissecting Carl. Carl asks him can I please wrap my face back up? And Negan replies, no, I'm not done looking at it yet. At this point, you can see Carl just gets angry, and he wants to know, why haven't you killed me yet? Why haven't you killed my father yet? Why haven't you killed Daryl? This perplexes Negan a little bit. I don't think you have, because you can't. For the first time ever, it looked like Negan was out of answers. I don't know if you picked up on that or not, but there was almost a complete retreat, like Carl had bested him, and Negan was going to take a different tactic to try to get around this little mini stand that he took from him.
I think everything with Negan is just a play. Everything that Negan does is just a way to psychologically mess with you just a little bit more.
Negan explains their usefulness, and it would be more fun to break Carl than to kill him. Carl calls him out and says he has no idea what he's doing, so Negan decides to take him home, and if you knew anything, you would kill us right now. And as the truck pulls out, you see Carl, you see Negan, they're headed towards Alexandria. We see Siegfried and Jesus on top of the truck. I don't know how he got up there or how no one saw him, but apparently it looks like Daryl might have, because he was looking up the whole time. Did you happen to notice that?
I did see Daryl looking up, and the thing is, as I said before, a close second in the hide-and-seek championship in the zombie apocalypse would be Jesus, and that man can kind of get wherever he wants to. He's amazing. I love the character. I love the casting. I love how he acts. I love how he is portrayed. It's wonderful.
Daryl makes an idle threat, and Negan tells him he better not do anything to him. Negan bangs on the truck and yells for not Daryl, and tells Dwight that Daryl might need a timeout. So he starts dragging him off. Negan flips him off, and then they pull away, and Jesus is gone. Where do you think Jesus went? Do you think he went in the truck? Do you think he went in the compound? Where do you think he went?
Well, I would like him to have gone in the truck, but we all know that's just not happening. Jesus knows who all the people are, who all the players are. Daryl saw Jesus, but I think Jesus saw Daryl and saw what's happening there at the Savior's compound. Time to go in and make some things happen.
We cut back to the Easy Street suite, and something gets slid under the door. It looks to be like possibly matches and a key attached to a note that says, go. Who do you think did that? Do you think Jesus did that? Was it Sherry? Was it Dwight? Possibly Fat Joey? Is it a trap? Who do you think did that?
I think Dwight. I think not Daryl sent Daryl the message and the key and the matches and stuff. I would like it to have been Jesus, but I think it was Dwight. I think that was Dwight's breaking point, and it was Dwight trying to show up and do his thing.
Yeah, it's sort of like the whole existential, he's kind of watching what happened to Mark, which happened to him. It might have snapped him to his senses. Not only that constant taunting. I don't know how Negan thinks that that's going to go in a productive manner. You don't build loyalty through mockery.
No, and Dwight's, like I said, you can only beat a man so much before he's had enough, and I think Dwight's had enough.
I kind of hope it was Fat Joey, but for no other reason than Fat Joey doing something other than carrying stuff around or being mocked for his weight. So Michonne and the rest of the 300 construct a wall o' bodies to slow Xerxes' forces. She forces some sort of truck driver, a truck pulls up, and she wants, the truck driver gets out, she gets the drop on her. Sword always beats gun at close proximity, and she wants her to bring her to Negan.
I don't know if sword beats gun at any proximity, but this is Michonne we're talking about. She's almost a samurai.
They get in the truck, they begin to go. The fast-thinking truck driver races the engine and stops short and makes a grab. To me, I could hear somewhere Frank Costanza yelling from his grave, "That's my move!" They fight for a second. Michonne gets the best of her, bounces her head off the steering wheel a couple times. She wants to go see Negan. I loved the Michonne action in that scene.
I did too. Michonne is and always will be one of the baddest characters in this show. She made her own way. She's done her own thing, and she's shown that she can survive on her own with somebody. Doesn't matter the situation. Michonne is here to stay. She is great, and this just showed how great she was again.
My opinion, one of the best characters on TV. Now that they let her talk and have a personality, she is just the baddest person there. You can rail for Daryl all day long, but Michonne's where it's at, in my opinion.
I agree completely. She is totally where it's at. And not that, unless she gains some Jedi powers, obviously sword doesn't beat crossbow, but the absolute cool factor of that sword beats crossbow every day of the week.
Meanwhile, we cut back to Alexandria. Olivia is yelling at Negan about them possibly starving. Negan and Olivia have a not-so-gentle conversation about portion control. Olivia begins to weep, and Negan apologizes. Negan just has no time for people with some extra weight on him. Have you noticed that going on with him?
Well, it's like if you have even a few extra pounds, you're relegated to other duties. I mean, he's got Fat Joe. He makes fun of Olivia. I don't know, but he's always seemed... I wonder, does he have a girdle on under that, and he's trying to deflect his own shame or something? Because he's always got his coat on. But, the thing is, I think the show needs to be a little more cognizant of what they're doing. It's bad, but the thing is, I think they needed to do the shaming a little bit because they're trying to make people understand what a prick Negan is, and it's hard to do that without crossing some social boundaries.
The odd part about him, though, is he seems to be a public prick. Like in private, in these one-on-one situations. Now, if he was addressing Olivia in front of the Saviors, there was no apology coming. But since they're, on a one-on-one basis, same with Carl, the boy begins to cry right away. Negan is nothing but apologetic. And the kind of the same thing with Olivia. He offers Olivia to screw her brains out while they're waiting. That doesn't go over very well.
Not well at all. She lashes back, gives him a nice swat. I don't know why, but, it worked as a little bit of vengeance for me coming from Olivia. It's not going to last because Negan doesn't let anything go unpunished. Something's going to happen from that, I'm almost positive. But for the moment, Olivia's got a little bit of headway.
Yeah, going back, he seems to put up with a certain amount of straight talk or disrespect as long as it's done on a one-on-one basis. For effect or when it's to a crowd, Olivia probably would be on her knees at that point and seeing the business end of Lucille. But since they're alone, he wants to keep this business relationship. He wants these people alive so they can work for him. So bashing their brains in is definitely counterproductive to what he's trying to get accomplished there. After she smacks him, he smiles at her and says, "Well, I'm about 50% more into you now, just saying." And then he makes her go get in some of that good powdered lemonade.
Yeah, she says, we're not supposed to. And he says, "Make it."
Carl leads Negan on, in my opinion, the worst tour I've ever seen, the worst tour montage I've ever seen in a show. That included carpet. Somehow the Saviors can't get carpet where they are, I guess. Running water from a faucet and that fantastic dartboard. Then he finds Judith and he begins bonding with her right away. He picks her up and starts playing with her. I was creeped out by the whole situation.
Oh, and I just felt my heart drop in my chest when he picked up Judith. It was like, oh, not Judith. Come on.
Yeah, this can go nowhere good. If Rick comes back and sees this, he's absolutely going to lose he's going to lose it. If he walks back and sees him holding her, this is the whole reason why Rick is even playing this game, is to keep her safe. I just don't know the conventional wisdom of keeping Judith at Rick's house if he's trying to keep her a secret.
Well, I don't know as he was trying to keep her a secret as much as he's trying to keep her safe, but, it can go only one of two ways, I think, if Rick comes back and Judith is in Negan's arms. Either that completely crushes and Rick is done, or vengeance is going to be cast upon him quickly and harshly. And I don't know about quickly, harshly is in that moment, or does the plan start to develop. I don't know, but it can't go any other way where he's like, oh, hey, you're being good to my daughter. Thanks. Hey, take it easy, buddy. I don't see that happening.
Hey, it's Negan from around the corner. He's babysitting for us. That's great. We cut back to Aaron and Rick kind of sneaking around. It looks like a compound of some sort. They come across the billboard. I'm going to post what's on the billboard, but my suggestion to anybody that's a fan, it was pretty interestingly written. Go find the text. It's out there. This guy looked like he was a little bit of a force to be reckoned with that put the billboard up. I wouldn't have messed with him, that's for certain.
No, he would have been like, okay, well, nice knowing you. I'm going to go back to the road and find somewhere else to go.
The ending of the billboard was, if you've gotten this far, chances are I'm probably dead. Rick and Aaron push on a little bit more. They come across, it looked to me, like a houseboat of some sort?
Yeah, like a down south houseboat. So not like a living on the ocean, beautiful houseboat, like a shanty on a boat.
And much like the Savior's placement of the walkers, it looks like he might have made some sort of fortress for himself around the dead. There's a pond and there's nothing but walkers all around in the water. Do you think that they were just kind of treading water, or do you think they're secured there in some way?
I think they're secured there in some way, but it's kind of a cross between... They reminded me of the bobbers from last week's episode. Like, maybe they're called bobbers because they actually do float, which is kind of odd. But, if you just kind of tied a chain or a rope or something to a rock and threw it in a specific spot, they would just kind of bob there.
We're back at Alexandria near the gate, and Rosita and Eugene and Spencer all kind of meet up. Spencer's absolutely found the mother lode. His car is packed full of food. The walker he pulled out of the tree had a supply list and a whole bunch of stuff hidden. He was able to decipher it through Latin, which his mom made him take. And he was bringing it back to give it all to the Saviors. We go inside. Negan and Carl are kind of sitting on Rick's porch, and they're drinking some lemonade. Apparently, Olivia came through. And we couldn't end the episode without one more idle threat to Carl as he's bouncing Baby Judith on his chest. And he says, Carl, maybe I am dumb for keeping you guys alive. Maybe I should kill you both, you and your father both, and plant you in this flower bed here, and I'll move to suburbia.
Planting in the flower bed, I love that. It's like, not only do I want to kill you, but I want to keep you close after I've done so. I'm going to move into your house, do my thing. Negan is awesome. I'm sorry. He is the true definition of a love-hate relationship. You love him because you love to hate him. He's great. The casting is good. The acting is good. The mannerisms are good. There isn't a bad thing I can say about how the show is portraying this character.
Well, I don't know if I brought this up or not before, but when you bring a character in, and he had one of the best entrances to a show ever. It was built up. It took a whole season to get there, and then we meet him, and then it took another 6 months for anything to happen with him. The powerful speech, the killing of two hugely. He didn't kill side characters. It wasn't Aaron and Rosita. He killed two of the most important characters in the series. So you built this guy up so high. It's sort of like you go into the World Series and you hit a walk-off home run in Game 7. There is no better than you could do in that situation. You've got this guy, he's built up, he's already a legend, and there's only one place you can go is down. We're definitely a pro Negan show. I get a kick out of his mannerisms. I get a kick out of his little Neganisms. I get a kick out of the fact that everything he says is for effect, just to measure how you're going to react. I think to pigeonhole this guy into just this brutal killer, and because he's not killing people, but more threatening people and trying to bring them in line, is short-sighted. He's definitely not the problem with this season. Some of the problems with this season, that maybe they overused him a couple in the episodes. Maybe the pacing of some of the episodes were bad. Maybe the placement of some of the episodes were bad. But overall, I'm still enjoying the show. I'm not ready to go anywhere. My coat and hat aren't on. I'm not ready to go out the door. I'm not ready to bail and go get some smokes and leave. I'm ready for the second half of the season because it only gets better from here.
I agree completely. I'm not ready to bail at all on this. And the thing is I am more invested now than I was in many of the previous seasons. That's the thing that Negan has done for me, is he's given me a reinvestment into what's going on. Like the wolves showing up last season gave me a little bit, but the saviors and seeing the grand scope of everything going on, and Negan especially as their leader, has just got me so firmly grasped in what's happening, because there's so many different ways things could happen. There's only a few eventual outcomes, but the paths to get to those eventual outcomes are almost endless. But I'm invested. I care about it. And the thing is because it's a love-hate thing, even if Negan gets killed, there's going to be a moment of loss with that because of the relationship formed with him.
I agree with you there. You can't have him running around bashing people's heads in every single week. I think part of the backlash we're seeing is so much from this Law and Order and CSI culture where everybody wants everything wrapped up in a tidy little bow in 48 minutes plus commercials. You're just not going to get that. The good stuff, the Game of Thrones, On the Night of, some of it's going to be a slow burn. It's not always going to be action-packed. Not every episode is going to be the best episode, but they're all building and they're all worth something. There's value in all this, whether it be character progression or character introduction. We're headed in the right direction. I guarantee it. Give it 2 more months. The ratings are going to shoot up, and the honeymoon with The Walking Dead will begin again.
Absolutely. It is so good. So, for me, this was a very strong episode. Now, it's not the strongest episode of the season, but it's a very strong episode. There was some great callbacks to the comic book. There was a lot of humor, which I always enjoy the humorous aspect. I think when you have a serious show, if you can't inject any humor into it at any point, it gets too serious and then it's a turnoff. It's the balance that makes everything work. So for me, this episode on its own, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say I give it let's say a 7.2.
Because of the more iconic scenes in the show, I'm going 8 across the board. Only because the iron, the Carl shooting, the Carl singing, to me, just enough Negan, a little bit of Rick. It's definitely an 8 for me.
Well, there you go. Cynic Radio Podcast. Episode 7 of The Walking Dead Season 7. Let's give it a 7.6 across the board. We'll just narrow that down. It's a very good episode. If you haven't watched it yet, go give it a look. You're going to want to watch it before you watch the mid-season finale. The mid-season finale coming up this next Sunday. It's so good. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to like it. And take a moment and read a few of the comics. And if you can get to the Negan comics, read some of those and see where the similarities lie. It's amazing how the shots are lined up with the comic panels. It is uncanny, the attention to detail they played. 7.6, Cynic Radio Podcast, Episode 7, The Walking Dead. So now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's time for Really. I'd explain it. Just listen. You'll get it.
A most unfortunate Really this week goes out to Jensen Dixon of Sycamore Township, which is northeast of Cincinnati, Ohio. He's found a unique way to decorate for Christmas by erecting a zombie nativity scene. No, you heard me correctly. A zombie nativity scene. Every year since 2014 he's done this, and every year it gets vandalized. Most recently, they decapitated the Virgin Mary. Mr. Dixon is quoted as saying he's going to keep repairing the scene as needed. Whether you agree with his actions or not, or the people vandalizing the nativity scene or not, building this was a cry for attention, and as we all well know, if you go out and seek attention from the general public, not all of it's going to be positive. In my opinion, Jensen, my friend, there's a time and place for all this, and it's called Halloween. So to you, Jensen Dixon, really?
Really for me this week goes out to the YouTube sensation PewDiePie. PewDiePie, who has more than 49 million followers on his YouTube channel, has said he will delete his channel when he hits 50 million in reaction to YouTube's practices of promoting other videos that apparently aren't his. Quoting, he says, YouTube is trying to kill my channel. It is clear. It is happening, and if you watch my analytics, it is all going down. PewDiePie made an estimated $15 million from the service last year, and he's taken that I'm going to take my ball and go home aspect to this. So PewDiePie, I guess if you're not having a good time with this, you're going to take your ball and go home. The world will miss you, but PewDiePie. Really?
That about does it for this week. We've said it all. We might have said too much. We'll be back next week with a Walking Dead mid-season finale show. Look for it around Thursday morning. And a bonus Walking Dead Season 7 Part 1 roundtable wrap-up discussion with some very special guests, more than likely around Monday morning. Yes, we know this is a very similar idea to the Talking Dead, but you can go suck it, Hardwick. Special thanks goes to Haven for Heroes. Check them out at 35 Front Street in Port Jervis, New York. And Avatars Radio, where this very program can be heard every Friday night at 9 o'clock. They're at avatarsradio.info. And if you like what you heard, go to iTunes and smash that subscription button and smash that review button. But if you give us anything less than 5 stars, we may show up at your house naked. I'm just warning you. And sometimes we just do that. It helps open up the show to a whole lot of more people that are craving the same awesome content that you just experienced. We're on all the social media sites. Basically, it's at Cynic Radio. You'll find us, except for Pinterest, because Ig can't stop looking at recipes on there. And if you want to contact the show about this week's contest, we're at cynicradio@gmail.com. So send us your thoughts, comments, questions, and maybe your family's secret mac and cheese recipes. But until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at cynicradio.com. Available for download on iTunes.